PUCL presents a special interview.
And welcome to another PUCL interview. This week we have someone new. We have, I hope I'm saying this correctly, Lava Cut Content, or however you want to go.
Dr. Lava's fine.
Dr. Lava. So first of all, who are you? What do you do?
Well, I'm a YouTuber. I've also got a website where I publish translations. Lately, we've been doing some 2011 Sugi Mori translations where he reveals some scrap designs from Gen 5 that didn't make it in the release version. So I do that on the site. And then on the YouTube channel, I deal with Nintendo Cut content, mostly lately just Pokemon stuff. And so we'll find internal data or translations of various ideas, concept art, maybe things that didn't make it into the release versions of, in this case, Pokemon games, and then kind of use video editing and maybe some kind of storytelling techniques to try to convey what those games, might have been like had those elements been incorporated.
All right. So I do this with everybody. I do it just to get things started, get things rolling. So we're going to ask you a few questions very quickly. Answer them to the best of your ability. And here we go. So who's your favorite Pokemon?
Probably Gligar.
Gligar. Okay.
Is it Gligar? I always mispronounce just about every single Pokemon because I played the game sitting, in my living room by myself.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I read the names and I'm like, that's Gligar. And,
is it Arceus? Is it Arceus? Is it...
All right. I've been playing, Gligar has been my favorite since I was since he came out, was almost 20 years ago now. So I've been saying my favorite Pokemon name wrong for 20 years, apparently.
First Pokemon game.
Blue version.
Favorite Pokemon game. Favorite overall.
Man, I really like both the Fire Red Leaf Green remakes as well as the Heart Gold and Soul Silver remakes. I think I got to go for Heart Gold and Soul Silver. That's
a good answer. And then favorite Pokemon spin-off game?
I haven't played a lot of them. I probably played 3 or 4. I think Pokemon Ranger had a certain charm to it. I take that back. I think Pokemon Snap will always be my favorite, just because the age I was when I played it, probably.
Favorite TM? This one always trips people up.
No, that is a tricky one. Man, I guess I'd have to say Snarl, purely because of the weird story behind it. Number 95 from Gen 5.
That's actually pretty good. That ties into your stuff pretty well.
Yeah, it's a little shameless plug in a way. Yeah.
All right, and then Sobble, Scorbunny, or Grookey?
I think I like. This is what everyone says. I like Sobble the best.
I don't know. That's what everybody. This is probably the one where I've seen the most diversity among people in terms of like choosing them. Because usually you have like the traditional like I pick the fire types because fire types are cool crowd, and then you've got like the people who are like I hate the cool crowd and they pick the water type, and then you have everybody else. And this time it's been a bit more diverse.
Well, on Twitter, anytime someone likes my stuff or whatever, I always see they've either changed their screen name to Sobble Squad or Grookey Gang. And I don't even know what the equivalent is for Scorbunny. So
I think it's like Team Scorbunny, but like Pokemon tried to push like a narrative where it was Scorbunny Squad.
Oh well, it's already taken.
Yeah, squad. Right. Exactly. I don't think they understand how this works.
Right.
All right. Well, so let's like get into it. So, like you said, you did a lot of Gen 5 like interviews and you translated them. So, like, I want to focus a lot on that because it's really cool content and it's just something that's really interesting to me as well. So, what made you decide to start doing that actually to begin with?
Well, I covered the cut content from Pokemon Gens 1 through 4, and then I was trying to find some unused designs for Gen 5, and I, Googling around, I quickly landed on a page I've been to before, a Bulbapedia page called Unused Pokemon, and they had only a handful from Gen 5, and there was no source for them. And so I was thinking, these are probably, a few of them said something about, they were from Nintendo Dream interviews, but I spent, I had to drive, I live in China, I had to drive about 5 hours to another city, and actually my wife drove, so I just spent the 5 hours trying to track down those interviews online. or even an issue number or anything like that, and I just couldn't. So I eventually posed the question to my YouTube followers in the community tab. At the time, it was about 22,000 people, and no one could find it. Eventually, Snorlax Monster, who's the manager of Bulba News, he actually sent me a link to an old defunct blog from a Japanese blogger who transcribed 2 of the interviews in Japanese, and they were the blog no longer existed, had to use a Wayback Machine. And so I got those, did a little bit more research, and basically ended up having those 2 interviews translated into English. And they confirmed some of the stuff that was on the Bulbapedia page, like that the Hydreigon family was originally a family of tank dragons, that Tornadus was originally red. And then there was a bunch of stuff that I'd never seen before, like that Petalil originally, I'm again sure I'm pronouncing that incorrectly.
I think that's correct. I don't know though. So
okay, but that there was originally a 3rd stage in the Petalil family that was scrapped. That there was originally a Litwick pre-evolution that was a flame Pokemon that was also scrapped. Let me think. The Dwebble and Crustle, if I'm pronouncing those correctly, were originally, he called them furnace Pokemon, whose shells were kiln-fired pottery. And so I've translated 3 of those interviews now, and I'm still trying to track down the rest of them. I've got 104 origin stories of the 156 from Gen 5. And
that's pretty good. That's like 2/3.
Right. The remaining interviews, I'll have to actually find these, I guess, about 8 or 9-year-old Japanese magazines somewhere. I've got contacts in Japan. I've got a translator now who's volunteering to translate and help me find some of this stuff, but even he's having trouble finding those old magazines. So hoping to track them down, have them translated, and find out what other designs did make into the game's release versions.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I was going to ask you what, so you mentioned you have a translator. So how many people are like involved in this to like make this happen? Because I imagine it's more than a one-man band.
Well, I do most of everything myself. Now I've got this translator who joined up with me a couple weeks ago. I've, of course, got my Patreon patrons who help fund some of these. Previously, I've been paying, I think, about $75 per translation. And I've also been commissioning some original artwork to help sort of recreate these lost designs. I don't know if you're familiar with Helix Chamber. Yeah. Rachel Briggs is their artist, and I've commissioned her to do some of these lost Pokemon designs as well, along with another artist named Nick Cron. And so, what was it? Oh, how many people? Yeah, so I do most of it, and then I've got the translator for the last couple weeks, these artists who are helping me out, and the funders on Patreon, and then, of course, I've always got people who are sending me this or that, but I guess you could say that's the team. Yeah.
So you turn these into videos, and like you've seen all these origins. So which one's your favorite thus far?
One I thought was interesting was Sugimori said in one of these interviews that he's long wanted to make an ant Pokemon as the smallest Pokemon in the Pokemon world, but they haven't ever gotten around to making it a reality. Which is a kind of a strange concept. I suppose because it would be weird to see something the size of an ant fighting, let's say, Dialga or something like that, and winning. So that one kind of stuck out to me. The Hydreigon, again pronouncing it wrong, the Hydreigon tank dragon family, that was also an interesting one. I think there's about 20 in total that I've found, and I think I've got a special place in my heart for that ant. I think that's sort of an interesting idea, even if it is kind of a terrible idea.
Well, it's kind of like Joltik. Joltik's pretty small. Granted, he's a tick and not an ant.
Right.
And then he had a chance. He made Durant that gen.
It was actually in his description of the Durant origin story that he mentioned this ant. He was saying something like, "Well, I've long wanted to make this tiny ant Pokemon, but this time, we made this ant. I decided to focus on this particular design, but I've still got that tiny ant in mind." So,
There's a chance. There's a chance then. Maybe one day. Maybe one day. Yeah, Poison Electric Ant. It's going to happen, guys.
Right.
So in terms of making videos, like, how long does it take you? What's your favorite one? Like the whole shebang. Tell us about your YouTube life and what you like about it and what you hate about it and everything.
Well, I actually do this full time. I don't currently have, a proper job right now. So I usually take about 1 month to make each video, which is YouTube algorithm. The YouTube algorithm doesn't recommend me all that much because they want people uploading every day. But I try to, especially lately, do stuff that's never done before, like bringing these translations to life, the original artwork. Finding these magazines and all that. And so it takes quite a bit of research, as well as I try to do a good job video editing as well to really kind of do justice to the source material. So I'm doing about one video a month presently. And my last one took me about, the one on the lock capsule took about 150 hours. And the one I'm currently working on is probably going to be, when you add up all the time for the translations and all that, will probably be well over 150 hours.
So for the lock capsule one, did you capture all that footage yourself?
Well, it was actually a bit complicated. I think to film on a DS to get, like proper footage as opposed to just kind of like using your iPhone to film, which obviously looks terrible. If I remember correctly, you needed some kind of ambassador relationship with Nintendo to get that equipment. I don't know why there was never an over-the-counter version, but I don't think there ever was.
There never will be, yeah.
So the reason the video took, at this point there certainly will not be, but the reason it took so long was I found a text dump of the game, which included, basically all the dialogue that was included in black and white, including the cut dialogue, which was the dialogue that was part of this lock capsule event. So I played the game quite a bit, played about 15 hours of black and white on emulator to get some footage. And then I kind of had to use some video editing tricks to sort of create the illusion that some parts of this event were going on. Some parts I was actually able to do in the emulator. Other parts had to be sort of, like I said, create an illusion. For example, when I'm having in a video a conversation with Mr. Locke, where he's saying, "Oh, you've got the lock capsule. I'm a sad clown. Oh, here's a letter from the Johto region. Blah blah blah." I had the text from the text dump, and then those old movies where someone's kidnapped someone's daughter or whatever, and they get a magazine and they clip out the letters.
Yeah,
which is basically what I had to do. Was I went around, talked to a whole bunch of NPCs so I could get all the letters, uppercase and lowercase, and then I clipped them. Moved them, 1/10 of a pixel at a time. When they appear on the screen, the text doesn't just flash up. It goes left to right, 4 characters at a time. 1/30th of a second, 4 characters appear. And so I've spent a lot of time making sure that the event that, again, was creating an illusion was happening in the video was, pixel by pixel, frame for frame, exactly how as it would have appeared if it were actually occurring. And that took a lot of time.
Wow. Yeah, that does sound like it took a lot of time. Oh, no. So is the event in the game, actually, or did you have to do that for that way?
You can, as part of the video, I also showed folks kind of how they could do it themselves, in which you can use an action replay, or there's also this fan-run DNS Wi-Fi server for the Nintendo DS. And using that, you can basically trick your game into receiving the lock capsule event, which was actually, because all this material is actually in the game.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
It's just Nintendo never distributed the lock capsule via special event that would have allowed people to experience it. And so basically you can use cheats or the DNS server to get that first step, which is receiving the lock capsule in Heart Gold. From there, everything else is actually in the games, and you can, talk to the mystery gift attendant, get the thing, send it over to black and white. You got to talk to the scientist and so on, all the steps that are shown in the video. And so you can actually play it. And a lot of people have commented like, "Oh, I just did the event, it works, blah, blah, blah."
Yeah. So in just like covering all of this, I don't know. I know you do other like not Pokemon stuff like on your website and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Are you like a Pokemon person, like center most, and then you just like expand out to Nintendo, or do you just see yourself as like Nintendo cut content and then you go from there?
Honestly, I don't really even like Pokemon very much. I'm just doing it
Really?
for the views. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
No, I've been a Pokemon nerd.
Okay.
Since I was 10 years old, and Pokemon.
I was gonna say, I'm like, this is a lot to go. There's a lot to go through.
All right. I'm a big Pokemon fan. I didn't play Generation 7, but I've played everything else, including, I think I said 4 or 5 of the spin-off games. Also big fan of, what you would probably expect, Metroid, Mario, Zelda.
Yeah.
So I've covered those as well. Not as extensively as Pokemon. Right now I'm just doing Pokemon, but eventually when I get through as much of all this Pokemon stuff as I can, I would like to... I've got a Luigi's Mansion script I'd like to turn into a video at some point, and some other kind of, just kind of big classic Nintendo games that have really interesting cut content and unused ideas.
That's super interesting. So then I guess then from a Pokemon community standpoint, how do you think that, I mean, I personally think this is something that's worthwhile and something that should be done, just because it's really cool to get everything cataloged properly and have like Pokemon Origins, especially if they were like just blatantly like stated, this is what we did with them. But do you think like the overall reception from the community has been really good for you in terms of like these interviews and everything else you've been putting out like that?
Yeah, the first 3 interviews I've translated have gotten about 100,000 reads, and then hits on my website.
Yeah.
Actually, it was cool. Someone, after I published the first one, someone tweeted it to James Turner, who's the British designer for the Pokemon games.
Yeah, now he's the director for Sword and Shield, actually, too.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, he's the
director?
He's the art director for Pokemon Sword and Shield. Yeah. Sugimori took a step back this time, and he let a new guy take over, and it was James Turner.
Oh, I didn't realize he was art director now. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But, someone tweeted it to him, and unsolicited by me. It wasn't, be on a sock account or whatever. But I was tagged in it, and so I saw the response, and he tweeted back that it was a good read, and kind of made my day just knowing that a man who actually creates Pokemon went to my website and read this article. But
and some of the Gen 5 ones. Those were some of his first designs.
Right. Vanilluxe family.
And
Golurk, right.
And Mandibuzz.
And exactly.
Yeah, the diaper chicken, yeah.
Right.
That's cool.
There was one thing described in that particular interview, which I hadn't realized before, and based on people's reactions, I think most people hadn't realized it, which is that, first of all, of course, Volibee, his diaper is the skull of a dead Pokemon, and then Mandibuzz, I guess he has something like a dress, which is the teeth, and so that when he sits on the egg to incubate it, presumably he meant before the egg hatches, it's meant to look like a skull, an upside down skull with the teeth poking out, which maybe some people knew that. I didn't know that until I read Sugimori's description.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Yeah, that's actually really cool that James Turner actually came back and like responded and said it was cool. That's pretty cool. That sounds like an accomplishment to be proud of.
Right. So I was pretty happy about that, and I think they've been pretty well received. Like I said, I think about 100,000 people have read it on my website, and then there's been quite a few other websites like Crunchyroll and Anime News Network and comicbook.com, who I was actually a bit frustrated. They kind of republish a lot of the information without linking to me. It's a bit annoying, but so I'm not quite sure how many people have read these interviews at this point, but seems to be pretty well received, so I'm pretty happy with it. I'm going to keep on. I've got kind of a stack of translations from the last 10 or 20 years I've piled up on my translator's desk, and he's working through them. I was actually working on one just now when I took a break from a translation to call you, actually.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. So could you let us in on anything that you're planning on doing in the near future?
Well, the next couple of videos will be the ones in which I present the information from these first 3 interviews with a 15 or 20 beta Pokemon designs. And like I said, I've got the original artwork for them.
Mm-hmm.
And then the interview I'm working right now is my translator, Kenji the Intern, is what he goes by. He sent me the translation. Now I'm writing commentary for it, in which there's some interesting information in there as well. Human characters are never as interesting as the monsters themselves, but there's some interesting stuff like that Professor Juniper, instead of being the first female professor, she was originally a fat man. And then and then Sukimori went, and as he recalls the situation, he complained to Masuda and said he wanted Juniper to be a woman, and he wanted her to be a career New York type woman, and that he would do the design. He would do the design himself, which he usually doesn't do. And it's kind of an interesting story of all these interviews, the development of Gen 5 and how things change and why they change because this person complained or this person stepped up and took responsibility for that character or that Pokemon. So, all these interviews are pretty interesting.
Yeah, I like that. I didn't know that at all. That's actually really interesting. I know a lot. I've been doing this for 12 years. And so, oh man, that's good. I like learning new things like that.
Yeah, well, I'm finding as much as I can throughout these translations. No,
I really appreciate that. So I guess that's pretty much all I have. And this has been a fun conversation. This has been a blast. So
yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, before we leave you though, like, where can people find you? Just do all your plugs, you know?
Oh, sure. I think I've only got a couple. I just on YouTube, I'm Dr. Lava, DRLAVA, Dr. Lava. And my website is just lavacutcontent.com, and that's where the translations are.
All right. That's awesome. Yeah, so that's where we are going to end it here, guys, with Dr. Lava. Once again, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me on.
And we're